Hello everyone, but let's talk about how you as an association executive can manage generative AI risks effectively. Now, you've probably heard about the Silicon Valley strategy of moving fast and breaking things. That doesn't really work with generative AI adoption, especially for associations, because what you have to do is you have to protect, guide, and empower your members with best practices for generative AI adoption. You have to lead the way for them, and you have to, of course, adopt them internally for your staff and volunteers to use. And your staff and volunteers should model their use for the members of your association. So let's talk about how you can approach and address these risks thoughtfully. I'm going to start with sharing some data around perceived risks about generative AI, which you should probably know about. There's a survey insight of a recent survey from an institute that evaluates AI, generative AI policy, that found that 72% of respondents support slowing down of development of generative AI. Only 8% favor acceleration. Their concerns are specific to generative AI tools like ChatGPT, DALL-E, Midjourney, Microsoft Copilot, Claude, Google Gemini, and so on. All of these tools that generate content, evaluate content. So that is something you have to be worried about. That survey response is representative of your stakeholders, of your members, of your staff, of your volunteers concerned about job security, ethical norms, and appropriate professional roles. So there is a real need for transparency in how you approach generative AI use in terms of evaluating its capabilities, evaluating its reliability, and more broad risks of generative AI. Now, the survey finds that 86% of respondents fear that generative AI could cause a catastrophic event. 76% worry about long-term threats. Now, that's long-term. The current risks are biased, inaccurate outputs, misuse for unethical activities, challenges to human judgment and professional and ethical standards. There are also sector-specific concerns. For example, if you're a healthcare association, you need to think about misdiagnosis. If you're a legal association, there's obviously been some issues with false information presented in court with the generative AI. So various associations that are sectoral have specific sectoral concerns. And there's a potential erosion of trust if you're using generative AI without appropriate safeguards. So what's a framework for you as an association executive to lead your members on appropriate generative AI usage? Well, what you want to think about, first of all, is educating members. So educate your members, offering workshops, webinars, other resources that highlight opportunities and risks. Then establish ethical guidelines for acceptable AI usage. You, as an association, can lead the way on adopting these guidelines, establishing them and adopting them throughout your industry. Advocate for regulation, appropriate regulation by the government, by industry-specific bodies, whatever you're doing. If you can establish regulation within your industry, it will decrease the likelihood that the government will be heavy-handed with its own regulation. And then have open dialogue within your association on best practices on generative AI usage. Showcase responsible uses of generative AI, good case studies of how it can be used effectively, and monitor trends and keep members updated on what's going on with generative AI. Now, that's how you approach your members, but you also want to internally adopt generative AI because it will improve efficiency and effectiveness for your association if your staff and volunteers adopt it, and it will provide a role model for your members. So provide training for your volunteers and staff on generative AI applications in association operational work. Encourage experimentation with tools within generative AI and figure out best case studies and share best practices across your staff and volunteers. Integrate generative AI into your workflows, into your internal processes, for example, automating communication, data entry, data summarization. Use generative AI for content drafting, analysis of member feedback, and strategic planning of what is going to be the case with future trends based on existing data. So you can do a lot with generative AI. Establish good governance policies for generative AI internally for ethical use within your association by your staff and volunteers within each individual chapter, and monitor how they're using it, of course. Address data privacy concerns, transparency concerns, and IP. Foster innovation and collaboration for generative AI usage. So have hackathons, have ideas, brainstorming sessions for how volunteers and staff can use it effectively within your association, and evaluate and optimize its use over time. Evaluate it through things like time saved, costs reduced, and staff satisfaction. All of these factors, these are just 3 factors that you can use. Also, of course, just the extent of adoption of generative AI. And share success stories with your members. Share with them how your staff and volunteers are using generative AI successfully and effectively to inspire them to do so as well. So that's the cautious but ambitious approach that you, as an association executive, should take. Balance innovation with responsibility. Avoid the Silicon Valley model of moving fast and breaking things. Advocate for ethical generative AI adoption and transparency in doing so. Align generative AI tools with professional values. You make sure that you enhance, not disrupt, member services and member perspectives on what is the appropriate use of generative AI. The future of associations definitely depends on effective generative AI adoption and on being a leader on guiding your industry into effective generative AI adoption for themselves. All right, everyone. I hope you've found this episode helpful. Please make sure to email me with any questions. My email is gleb, Gleb, @disasteravoidanceexperts.com. Look forward to hearing from you.